Everyone please rise for the pledge and remain standing for the prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this beautiful afternoon, this beautiful day we've had. We just pray for those affected in the Ukraine and the surrounding region by what's going on overseas. And we pray for your hedge of protection upon them. We pray for peace. And we pray to thank you for the peace and the freedom that we have. Thank you for every man and woman who has served or is serving to protect this country and keep us free. And may we not take for granted what we have and the ability that we have right now to gather and to make decisions for this community and for the people that can mill about town and the surrounding and do so in safety and make decisions for their family and their jobs and so forth and be unaffected by what's going on in their country. So we just pray for peace. We thank you for your guidance and wisdom tonight. We just thank you for the blessing of this meeting. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right, Jan, if you would, roll call.
Brandon Elmore.
Present.
Bob Leahy.
Here.
Nathan Copeland.
I am here.
Tim Heiss.
Here.
Theo Frias. Not here.
Yeah, Tito had a very important function with his daughter, so with school. Yes, I've got glasses now.
So you're old
for
now too.
Yeah, what's that?
So you're old now too.
Yeah, exactly. That's official. The print keeps getting smaller, but I found out that's not really what's happening. As far as the consent agenda, I trust that you've had an opportunity to review it. Any questions or comments? If not, Bob?
I was just noticing the tremendous amount of wastewater treatment plant repairs.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Rob's not here, and I don't know if Steve has any info, but it just seemed like, and most of that stuff's supposed to be new. Or Tim, maybe Tim can.
I'm not sure what you're referencing as repairs. They're
I'm thinking
I didn't print out the.
it's probably from the damage from the water that they had.
yeah.
There's
When it flooded,
The flood.
basically all of those parts and pieces and components are finally starting to arrive. Even though that's been 6, 7, 8 months ago.
Okay. Yeah.
But like the pumps and stuff that were damaged and needed replaced, all that stuff's starting to come in. So.
Okay.
And I know there were a couple little projects that were part of little things that they planned that they kind of came up with, like they built a closet and enclosed a stairway in the old control room. After that was all done, it had to basically, that plan didn't come together until the final look, until everything else was done with the plant and finalized, and then they come in and just do that, and our guys did that. So there's some invoices in there for that I'm familiar with. So,
All right.
but yeah, there's a lot of little things that he's been doing otherwise, and then like I say, all that stuff from the damage from the flood
Okay.
is filtering in there too, I noticed.
That's good.
All right.
Yep.
Any other questions? If not, we'll entertain a motion for approval.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have first, we have a second.
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Consent agenda approved as presented. We have no presenters on the agenda, but department reports. I'm happy to say we got all the suspended Christmas lights that were hanging from the trees. Those are all down and stored finally. The lights, if you notice the lights being a lot brighter in town, those are new LED lights that the electric company is putting in.
Awesome.
So yeah,
A lot
so
of positive feedback about that.
Really.
I was gonna say, well, I'm glad to hear positive feedback. I heard some that were complaining they were too bright. It's like, I actually told my wife one night, I was like, we can't win. Because the first year and a half I was in office, I heard that the streets weren't bright enough, and now they're actually too bright.
I kept looking out the window and thinking, there's a car, there's a car.
Oh, yeah.
outside, and a car coming down the street or something, no?
But for what it's worth, bright, the lighting does help add to safety.
It
And
does.
so that has been enhanced without us having to do anything in terms of expenditures, because
That's
that's AEP doing that initiative with replacing, with LEDs. And be happy to note that we were voted, Vision Corner was voted for the first phase funding through READY. So they were voted for the first 5 projects to be funded in the region. So
That's
not
awesome.
only, before we knew we had approval, but now they're at the top of the pack, so.
Official.
Which we'd hope so, because it was scored the highest, but
Right.
you just never know. Jan, do you have anything?
Yeah, just kind of quick. I, just, the end of February, the annual financial report was due. And what I put on your desk, the sheet stapled together is the cash and investment
Oh.
and buying statement.
Yes.
And that's part of the report, not the whole thing. You can go down through there and you can see which funds exceeded the disbursements, which ones exceeded the revenues. But overall, for all government activities and wastewater and water, overall, the disbursements were less than the revenue. So the bank accounts and the funds went
That's good.
up. The second spreadsheet shows receipts and disbursements for the tax revenue funds. That's just broken out, so that's some of the funds that are on your first sheet, but they're broken, those are the tax revenue funds, so they show how they did. I printed them out to give to you so you can look them over, and then if you have any questions, you'd ask me next time or email me.
Very good. Thank you, Jan. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Council members, Brandon, let's start with you.
Just had a real quick update about Pollution Solutions. So they officially opened on the 12th for the season. They'll run on Saturdays and Thursdays. Saturdays from 8 a.m. to noon, and then Thursdays from 3 to 6 p.m. So
Okay.
that's all I had then.
Very good. Good job. Bob?
I didn't have anything.
Okay. Brandon? Or Nate? Sorry. You're gonna go back to Brandon.
Brandon
Nate,
again?
sorry.
Couple things that I've had conversations with different people about. One question was residency about the backstay. Is it full?
If it's not, it's plumb near.
Okay.
The
Because
last,
I
the
know they-
last number was 44 out of 50 were occupied.
And they still had, they
They
were still
still
swimming
had
through.
approved applications to fill the last 6 apartments.
Yeah.
Wow,
So,
that's awesome.
That's good.
yeah.
Any headway on the downstairs corner space? What's going on there?
That's,
I've not received any update on terms of,
Okay.
The last suggestion was to see if he could make it market rate.
Okay.
Because, again, the concern being that there was such a large segment of the population that was not able
Yeah.
to live there. So I don't know if that's the avenue they're pursuing or not.
So it's no longer going to be offices or
Or-
rental space?
that's part of his conversation. I don't think he's got a concrete plan of what he's going to do with it.
Okay.
just yet.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't know.
We've
So,
talked
good
to him
question.
about retail, we've talked to him about market rate, we've talked to him about several different things, but I
Okay.
don't think there's a finalized plan.
Good to know. I did say to this gentleman, he moved back to town recently. His name's Chris Byram. I said I would say hello. I said welcome, welcome back to town.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
He actually lives in the backstay and says it's a fantastic place. The people are really nice, and that he's very happy and pleased with it. So
That's good.
Love having him back.
yeah, oh yeah, he's he actually was the ball boy, whatever you want to call it, assistant when I played soccer in high school. So it's
Oh,
fun to see
cool.
it come full term and see him back in town.
That's
so.
awesome.
That's good to know. And another thing is people have probably noticed my house has gone on the market. I have not officially bought another house or moved. At some point in the future, my seat will be up for a conversation. I don't think that will happen until the end of April, but I will make sure everybody is amply updated. And if you have questions, thoughts, concerns, let me know. We're not moving far, but an opportunity came up that it's tough to pass up on for our family. So.
No.
Other than that, I'm intrigued to hear a couple of these things that we got down the list, so I think that's all I've got.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Tim?
The only thing interesting at Board of Work today was items that are on the agenda
Okay.
otherwise, so
Okay.
there's nothing really for me to bring up.
All right. Waiting an update from Braden. And for Steve, anything that you want to share
Just-
now?
I'll talk when the agenda items are up.
Okay. All right. Then, well, we will go to there next. We don't have any old business, so new business, we have a fire hydrant purchase.
Yeah, you've got, a quote in your packet for 6, new fire hydrants. Basically, that's something that the water department, that Brad is intending on beginning. This year, he wanted to start it before now, but with the water meter purchases and the things that they've been doing over the last 3 or 4 years and paying off, it just hasn't happened. This is a annual thing that will be repetitive. We have hundreds of fire hydrants. They're very old. They're decades old. Within the last year, there's been numerous hydrants that's had to have kind of emergency point repairs periodically. We've had hydrants out of service, and it's not going to get any better or any cheaper if we don't start. So he's proposing that we basically start this year and buy 6 new hydrants every year from this point forward and just start replacing them. So that's kind of what you're looking at. That is the cost just for the hydrants. There would be some additional cost that would be the installation part of it, and we don't know what that is, but we would probably hire a local contractor to come in and do that work. And I believe in doing that, we would be updating our water mains with line stops and things that would make it easier for us in the future to maintenance and service hydrants as we replace them, because right now that's not a very easy process for us.
Yeah, one thing I'll note is included on here is the gate valves, and one of the problems with the number of these hydrants in town is that they don't have any valve in front of them. And so they're live to the main, so they're difficult to shut down, and a bit obtrusive sometimes when you
And this would be a new spec for our hydrant. We would be going to a Storch fitting instead of the traditional old style threaded large cap that you see on our hydrants. It would be a 1/4 turn rapid connection that we use at the fire department. So technically the hydrants would be quicker and faster to connect to. We wouldn't be sitting there spinning 5 or 6 revolutions to connect a hose.
I've got a question in regards to quantity. Is there a quantity discount? Like if we upped it to 10, do we get 10% off or anything like that?
I didn't ask that question because Brad felt like 6 would be what he would want to manage budget with Terry Wise every year. So
I was just thinking,
we can get that number, but
stuff's not getting cheaper. And
it's not getting cheaper, and I don't know that buying 4 more I mean, it does get it done quicker, but you know, it's going to be a process for us to get 6 done, because it's not something that you can just spin the old one off and spin the new one on. So you got to dig holes and cut lines and do all kinds of stuff to do it.
So how many total need to be replaced throughout the city? I mean,
I
doing
didn't
6,
count
I mean,
that, but I'm saying there's hundreds of
So we're
hydrants
looking at
around town,
a couple of decades maybe even.
theoretically. But keep in mind they're decades old, so they last forever. But ours are probably from the early 1960s and 70s. I would guess the majority of our hydrants are. So it's just time to start maintaining and updating that technology.
With this being like a reoccurring, like annual type purchase, I mean, we have a
That's
budget line
Brad's
item type of
intention,
thing
yes.
for them,
Yep.
specifically for them.
the only thing I would say is if we could potentially see if we bought 4 more, do we get 10% off basically by doing that? It's a
Yeah, I
big
can
round
find
full
out.
now.
That's just a quote that he put together because he felt like that was
Even
a
if we had,
manageable number.
even if we didn't have time to install them, We can just put them in storage and,
Unless they go bad sitting.
Well,
Yeah,
they don't.
Yeah.
The only thing we may run into with that a little bit right now is everything's in short supply enough that they may,
May not give a
they
discount.
may not, but there might be a creative conversation to have about, our intention is 6, and if there's any advantage to buying or committing to more, we don't necessarily need 12 or 10 or 12 of them all at once right now.
Right.
We'd
We'll
like
commit
to
to
have,
25
we'd
at
like to
this
have,
price.
Yeah.
we'd like to have 6 over this period of time, but with the understanding that they're gonna keep coming. So, and at the same time, Brad's worked with utility supply for a long time. Excuse me. And I would imagine that he's had this discussion with them, so they may be kind of pricing this with this in mind.
Yeah,
That
that
it's gonna
could
be a
be.
reoccurring thing, but like I say, that's the good questions to get into, is whether to make any difference. But
Do you want to fill the motion for pending, or do you want to?
I was gonna say,
I would like to at least get permission to get the process started with at least 6. If we can save money, then let us put a pending order in, or I can call each of the council members and then just inform them what the savings is. I mean,
Does that sound fair?
yeah,
Okay.
the big picture conversation is, I don't think they're gonna be delivered tomorrow. So we're gonna have a waiting time, we're gonna have scheduling issues to get the contractors in to do the work. So I don't wanna just keep dragging it out 2
Well,
weeks at a
and-
time.
And we can approve this now at this amount, and obviously, we're not gonna have to vote to approve the expenditure till we actually have the bill in hand, so there's not really a problem with, if there's a deal to be had. I don't think that'd be a problem for you to be able to make a commitment.
You wanna see 10% or more?
oh,
And
I
the
mean,
discount?
anything, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Last year, I ordered 15 computers throughout the year through Dell. I reached out to them and says, hey, here's my plan for the whole year. If I buy them in 3 increments, is there some kind of quantity discount? And they said, of course. Thanks for mentioning that. The year prior, I bought like 10, but I didn't mention it, so I ended up paying like 25% more
Yeah.
for those 10. So it's trying to help everybody else learn through a situation I did not.
Well, I will find out.
And there may be, it depends on the items, and in my business, 2 or 3% sometimes is a
Can make a
big
big
discount.
difference, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, when you're
And
talking
so-
26 for 6,
Because we
so-
work on such skimpy margins,
Yep.
those little bit of,
percentage makes a difference.
I did a $10,000 order the other day and got a $300 cash spiff.
Nice.
Wow, that really put a dent in it.
Money's money. I would hereby entertain a motion.
I move that we approve fire hydrant purchase as presented and continue the conversation to see if there's ways to save money.
We have a first, we have a second.
I'll
With
second.
the contingency.
I'll
We have
second.
First and second. Dan, if you
Who was
would.
the second one?
Bob. Could you roll call vote, please?
Brandon Elmore,
Yes.
Bob Levinson,
Yes.
Nathan Conklin,
Yes.
Tim Heiss.
Yes.
Tito Frias. Not here, sorry.
Thank you.
All right, I will keep that in your end of the court if you want to address the Greenwood Trailer Park.
Yep. We all started hashing this out prior to the meeting, so, again, this letter that's in your packet is, intended to be the first part of the conversation for, addressing the I&I issues at Greenwood Trailer Park. Again, what we have done to date is part of an agreed order from IDEM. There's conversation that needs to be had with IDEM, there's conversation that needs to be had with the Shapiro Group, there's conversation that needs to be had with this body, so, what I'm ultimately requesting is just your permission to begin these conversations and get your feedback for what you want to see in the agreement so that we can start structuring our response to this letter. the general premise and what Brad and Rob and I and Monty have all met and discussed is we don't believe we should be involved in any of the decision-making process. We believe that there should be a third-party contractor mutually agreed upon to do the evaluation of the current system. We believe that, you know, there has to be a clear black and white plan to move forward, complete with a timeline of work to be done. You know, whether or not the current system can be lined or effectively dealt with in another manner. I think we're willing to help provide equipment periodically. I think we're willing to help, you know, with doing a little bit of research, but we're not going to come back with any type of definitive do this or do that, because that's not our gig. So I think the first steps of this conversation has to be that we got to agree on an engineering firm to do the evaluation.
Help me understand here, because if it was a normal residence, any other house in town, the citizen is responsible from the property line, correct?
They would be responsible for the lateral, yes.
The lateral, just where it connects to the city. But then the difference is then with water, it's after the meter running through the house is all on the citizen. So, I hate to say this, but it seems a little unfair for them to potentially ask for all this to be waived when we can't really do this for all of our other homes in town. It's an investment. They knew what they were buying. I think there's ample room for a conversation, but I think it's also one of those, right here, this number's $43,000, and it looks like it's only gonna go up from here on out. Because monthly, it's gonna keep going. Jen, can you answer how long prior to the October invoice they've had big bills like this?
It depends on the water, because you're talking about stormwater,
Yeah.
runoff water. So it depends on how much rain there is to how high their
Yeah.
bill is. And there's other factors in that too, like if the ground's frozen, then the water doesn't seep into the ground, I guess, so it runs off and then into the system. So I don't know, so I mean, it goes up and down, but it's not going to, are you asking is the,
Has it been like a 2 or 3 year they've been paying $5,000 and $7,000 a month?
yes.
Okay.
It's about 2, but I think, I didn't look at when they started, it's been at least 2 years, probably 3.
And how long has this group owned them?
This group's owned it for a year.
Yeah, they're the newest.
But-
Yeah, just
and that's-
barely a year.
And that was the, I can't tell by their, and that's one of the things and I don't, you know, this, I actually don't think their scope is too bad or too one-sided, but there are a couple little things in there like the credit for the past sewer overages. They're not specific whether they're talking about overall since it was metered or just since their ownership. And I don't think, my first inclination is that if you're gonna entertain that, you'd entertain what since their ownership, but the previous to their ownership, that wasn't their money.
Right,
They're not
yeah,
out any
yeah,
dollars
that's-
for
yeah,
previous
that's-
ownership.
Yeah, correct.
So it's not reasonable to reimburse those dollars. And then we also can decide whether we need to, one of the things that I think about is that do we reimburse 100% of that, or do we reimburse a percentage minus what we consider what our extra costs were handling that? Do we determine that, well, our actual cost was X number of dollars, and so that we reimburse them with 75% as opposed to 100%? But it's a reasonable incentive to give them. Now, of course, compared to a homeowner doesn't have this. I think, am I correct in that we basically take the meter reading and subtract the units that, you know,
Are you talking about for the motor or the trailer park?
yeah.
trailer park, the meter takes all the water that goes through that meter.
Right.
That also includes any water that comes through from the residents.
Right,
You subtract the amount of money that the residents
residents
paid
paid.
for already,
right.
take that out of the total and we
Right.
charge them for
So the
rest.
only charge that they're getting is the overage over what
The
the
residents
I&I
use.
does in theory. It can't be exact, but it's, whereas we're not normally billing that.
Right, correct.
And Steve and I had a little conversation, and Jan, about this earlier, after Board of Works too, and there's probably some factors in there such as the removal of the meter, and Steve presented that IDEM may not let us remove the meter. So we're gonna be, and that's why, IDEM's gonna have to be in the, IDEM's gonna have
Part
to
of this
be in
conversation.
as a partner in this too.
Yep.
So that we don't exceed what they'll allow.
I mean, to me, I think we need to have the engineering firm come in and see what needs to be done.
Yeah.
What the costs are gonna be
Right.
before we have this conversation about reimbursing them any fees or funds, any, sewage bills going forward, forgiveness of those, but because we're not sure what they're getting into, we're not sure what, the costs are gonna be. I think we need that information first, in my opinion.
I agree.
Is that reasonable, Steve, or is that something that?
No, I think that's very reasonable. Everything you guys are saying is 100% accurate. They bought the place as an investment. The majority of the properties out there are owned by them, and they lease them to the tenants. They knew what they were getting themselves into. They flip these parks all the time. Their ultimate goal is all new trailers, all new rigid foundations, all new lines, new street lights. They want the park to be beautiful. That's ultimately what they want.
Yeah, tremendous.
But there's also, just like with flipping a home or being a landlord or rental properties, whatever, there's a formula, and they're doing everything within their power to fit this park into their formula. So
Mitigate the loss.
ultimately what that means for us is we want this problem solved. IDEM wants this problem solved, and this money is not anything that Rob even wants to collect. He just wants no I&I coming to it. I think we have to be cautious. I think we have to do our due diligence. We have to be, I think a little bit rigid with what our responses are. Ultimately, it is their problem. But big picture, we're better off if in 3 to 4 years there's no more I&I coming out of Greenwood Trailer Park. And I don't think we can lose sight of that goal.
Yeah, I think any forgiveness or any way we frame that, we have to have proof that they're reinvesting that into that system.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
for sure,
commitment that
definitely.
shows that they're actually doing it with an engineer,
Yeah.
third-party engineer
That's,
company.
yeah.
That they're not taking that money and selling the park out from underneath us, and moving on. That's my fear of that, that potential.
Well, and as far as making, we've got, at least we're in a position we're a little bit better off than we've been, as we have an owner that has an interest in doing something about this problem. In the past, we
Yeah.
haven't had any real
Absolutely.
interest.
Right.
And I had a conversation with Rob last year, and I think I said something along the lines of, well, the I&I is being metered and billed, so IDEM can't be quite as upset with us about it. And he said, no, actually, they don't really look at it any differently. The I&I is I&I, they want it out, regardless of whether you're metering it and billing it and so forth.
Yeah.
You're still processing it, and I see that point of view that they have, but so we're obligated to eliminate that, or we have to try to eliminate that no matter what, whether we're billing for it or not. And we're never going to overcome this completely. Nobody ever has, but we can make a serious dent in it, and they know that IDEM understands that, and they know what are acceptable levels.
So path forward is,
Path forward, I'll
So-
draft a response to this letter, and we'll get that submitted to the Shapiro Group, and it's my intention to not commit to anything and encourage them to hire a third-party engineering firm to come in and do the evaluation of the system. We will be there for use of our equipment. We'll be there to assist the engineering firm, but we will not make any recommendations or any claims of how to, so to speak. And I think the financial conversation, from what I'm hearing, needs to take place down the road once there's kind of the creation of a plan.
And I actually have a question, if we could potentially write this down for Mr. Prinky, is how does this fall? What do other communities, how do they treat this? I know
In my conversations with the Shapiro Group, they deal with this all the time.
other communities do, so what do? Do they fix it?
Exactly what we're doing right now.
Okay.
They propose, they send a letter of what they think we should do, and then there's a counter to that, and they go back and forth until they ultimately figure out how to find middle ground to fix the problem.
So what I'm trying to figure out is whose responsibility is this? Is it 100% on them? Is it some
Yes.
50-50? Okay, so if
It's
it's 100%
on
them.
them. But it's like any other government project. There's wiggle room, and there's ways to manipulate the end result of getting there, and they know that. I mean, this company is so, they're large enough that the guy that drove here wasn't Mr. Shapiro. The guy that drove here was the director of their infrastructure program. So if they're a company that's managing mobile home parks all over the country, and they've got that guy in place that's all he does is deal with their infrastructure, they've done this a time or two.
Can we ask for somebody they've worked with in the past?
I can, yeah. I haven't, but I can.
Like, let's say, for example, they had one in Greenville, Ohio. Well, let's call and ask somebody there, part of that city. How did it work out? Did they actually stay true to their word? If you commit to something, are they going to do it? And did you do what you said you were going to do? Just because I know this property has been an issue for a number of years, it keeps changing hands, and at one point in time, it was potentially going to be sold as commercial ground. That could have been turned into a factory and added jobs to the community. I'm still not opposed to that idea versus giving away hundreds of thousands of dollars that the city's revenue uses to move the city forward.
Well, we're not using hundreds of thousands of our own money to move, I mean, they're,
Right now, they're asking for $43,000 to be forgiven, and that's
Wow.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months.
yeah.
They want it
that's-
48 months of that forgiven. That's 4 years. We're looking at least $300,000. Am I not doing my math correctly?
Pretty close.
Yeah.
So you don't want them to fix the problem, because that's gonna get rid of our revenue right there.
I don't. They own it. That's my take. They own it. They need to fix it. They bought the property. It's an investment property. I mean, it's part of business. I don't mean to be crude.
Well, I know, I'm just saying that revenue stream will go away if it's fixed. So do you not
Yeah,
want that?
it's gonna go away either way, yeah.
Well, if we put a commercial business and it took up the 78 area that this takes up, hopefully we'd be selling a
Well,
commercial
that-
business.
That's also
Commercial
that's also a point of negotiation too, because like I say, one of the things that we can also look at is what, do we wanna be 100% on something, or do we wanna be a lower percent? And those are conversations to have, and because like I say, we've collected a lot of this in form of penalty because the rate is pretty high, but we still have expenses, and I don't know if we have a determination on what those expenses actually are, but within the department, but get a little more information on that may help illuminate what our actual expenses are. Because if we've got actual expenses that we've incurred with that, then it's it's not unreasonable that we keep that part of it.
Does this make sense to you?
Right.
Okay. Bob, what's Board of Works said?
We recommended to move forward with the discussion, and I don't think there's anything unreasonable about having any of that in the discussion of whether, you know, we didn't make a recommendation specifically on what the terms should be, and that's not what we're gonna be doing at this point either. We're gonna be looking at, and because it's all gonna come back to the council to make a decision on this as far as accepting any agreement that, you know, Steve and Steve and Chad and Monty and Ryan combined with IDEM and so forth can hash out an agreement, but it's still gonna come back to the council to approve it.
Well, the other
So
thing
we're gonna
we
be-
gotta be concerned about, like Steve said, our objective still needs to be to fix the infiltration problem. Not us, but that
Yeah,
needs to
somebody
be
needs to
fixed.
fix it.
Well,
yeah.
And who was, if you don't mind me asking, who was the company that was looking at buying that land for?
The one that built right there across from the big blue building, giant long
Consolidated.
building.
Oh,
Consolidated
Union,
Metals.
all consolidated,
Consolidated.
gotcha,
They almost bought the whole place.
gotcha.
So, yeah, lost my train of thought, sorry.
No, you're good.
But like I say, one of the things that to be concerned with is that if someone were to shut down that trailer park and basically walk away from it, let's say somebody failed completely and were foreclosed on, it went into the tax sale. When the Union City acquires it tax-wise, one of the problems we'd have is that we'd have to go in and shut off the sewer lines to cut the infiltration, because the infiltration would be there whether anybody's
Right.
occupying it or not.
Right.
Now, we'd be able to shut it down at that point if there's nobody living there, if there are still people living there. So you'd have this period of time that you're still dealing with infiltration.
Yeah.
If it ultimately failed completely, now you've got something that may or may not have value for a number of years.
Right.
And so that it, lots
And
of
drawing no
problems would be
revenue
created,
either.
and drawing no revenue. The trailers all leave, so the tax revenues from the trailers go, the value of the land gets downgraded.
The
Now,
city doesn't get tax revenue from the trailers if they own them.
well,
the
they
property tax
pay
revenue.
personal property tax on those.
The management company.
The management company,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, the
Yes.
owners, yeah, whoever owns it, whether it's management or whether they're individual
Yeah.
owned. I think there's still some individual.
There's still
owned.
some privately owned trailers
There's
in
some
there, but the
privately
majority of them are owned by
Okay.
Yeah,
the park.
and there is potential to expand into some of the unused area if some problems are solved, so. But,
I think on the positive side, it sounds like they're willing to try. It
yeah,
sounds like
they say they're,
they're willing to play ball here and fix the problem potentially. But again, going back to my comments about let's get an engineering firm out here, have them hire them and start that ball game.
yeah.
Yeah.
To see what the true cost is going to be.
Third party.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, and that's what, if we can get an agreement on that part to begin with,
Mhm.
is gonna be, critical,
Yeah, absolutely.
so. I'll make the motion that we approve, I'll call it the executive, to, enter into talks with the Shapiro Group, Shapiro Real Estate Group, on the subject of the I&I in Greenwood Park.
First, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Jan, you would roll call vote?
Brandon Elmore,
Yes.
Bob Leahy,
Yes.
Nathan Coughlin,
Yes.
Tim Heiss.
Yes.
And the next one is the ordinance 2022-03, which is the ordinance to amend the county sign ordinance.
My understanding is this did not happen at the county meeting. Is that correct?
Actually, county did approve, or no, the
Commissioners.
Area planning.
planning approved.
Area planning.
Yeah, area
But the
planning
county
approved.
did not.
Yeah, county hasn't voted on it
Commissioners.
yet, right? County
They
council.
tabled it.
Yeah, they tabled.
Commissioners table.
I believe we table until the commissioners have made a decision to make sure we don't muddy the waters.
Good point.
Well, I'll be honest, I'll make my opinion known for what it's worth. You guys obviously need to do what you feel is right. As it stands, I would be a hard no for this. A hard no.
Alright.
Because there's several signs right now that are in violation of this that have been in existence for some time. One of the claims was that our fire department sign was the cause of safety hazard. There's not been, when's the last accident that you've attended to down there?
There's never been an accident at that intersection, since we've been down
Since
there.
the sign's been there?
Yeah.
So zero. Zero has been the number of accidents since that sign has been there. There's been the accusation that was an issue. And then we also have I think one of the verbiages was the sign, the rate of change for the sign. I'm trying to think, see where that was at. Because it does not have to have the same sign, like a digital sign, has to have the same appearance on it for how long? Is that?
There is a statement in there that as long as it's not more than 10 square feet, it can be an LED message board. They have allowed
That can change?
that it can change. It has, I think it's 12 seconds. It has to show the same message for 12 seconds. It can't have any animation. It has to switch seamlessly from one message to the next. It can't scroll, or you can't have a waving flag or any type of animation on it. No snowflakes falling or anything like that. It has to flash the message, 12 seconds, then it has to be a new message.
It should be a still
As
message.
long as it's not, as long as the sign itself isn't greater than 10 square feet.
But still, it has to be a still digital
Correct.
message.
I mean, for me, doing what I do for the city, it's got to be a hard no, because they're basically sending a message that this county is 100% against modern technology and the capabilities that a business could utilize to market their business. For no other reason, that has to be a hard no. This county has to be a friend to business growth, business development. It just has to be.
So can you explain, if we say no, I thought the understanding was the county could still potentially approve it.
They
and we-
can.
They can.
It goes back to the county. We have to submit in writing why we're saying no. And the APC, in theory, would have the ability to override our no, but at least we would be sending a unified message.
You know, you can laugh at me, but on this one, but I'm not entirely sure that the scrolling message or the limiting the movement of the message is not a First Amendment violation.
That's interesting.
And I'd like to see somebody argue it.
You know
I'm
what?
not- I'm not qualified.
Tim, you know what? Because I lost a lot of nights' sleep and went through a lot of pain and headache and even personal attacks over the banners that have been allowed to be posted in people's yards with language that is far worse, I think, to our society than a digital sign that has a snowflake falling from it. I'm sorry. I think if that's the kind of discussion we're actually having nowadays, does that tell you something?
I didn't mean to open that can of
Well, I'm
worms.
sorry.
I see your position.
Oh, I
and I feel for
had personal attacks on that during that time, and I was livid. You know, I had to send stuff to our police chief on some texts I got that were highly inappropriate
Yeah.
about my family because of my actions of parking a couple pieces of street equipment in front of a house that had explicit language plastered all over it, and I didn't want 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds going by in a parade seeing that. I'm sorry. I will not waver from my morals and my ethics.
And keep in mind that APC wouldn't assist us in removing those either.
Well, they were finally in the process of issuing a letter, and they were, but it did take quite a while. But so that's what I have concern with. That's a great point, because there's no problem letting that slide, but this all of a sudden is an issue. That's a great point.
And
I've got a problem
secondarily,
with that.
just so you guys are aware, there's plans to put 2 more on the Miami Theater facade for an LED message board for community events and everything that's going on in town, just like what we have at the fire department. And that's going to be part of the new facade of Vision Corner. And I think we have to be 100%
Well-
against it.
Sorry, I should probably restate what I was trying to say. I think the county needs to shut this down. Us tabling it for them to make the decision to shut this down is better to make sure that we're getting represented at the county level. And if they don't, since it's tabled, we then vote no at the next meeting. I was letting the county officials try to make that determination on behalf before we go and say,
Yeah, I get that. I
here's a
get
big finger no. Like,
I get that. I mean, again, it's ultimately your guys' decision.
Do we have time for that?
I don't know.
I believe you have,
this says 90 days,
days.
February 23rd.
We have 90 days, and the APC has 45 if we send back and reject it? Is that right?
I know somebody was waiting for something, but just have to wait a little longer.
Yeah, the animation should not be allowed. That's, goodness gracious.
That's interesting.
Does anybody have any, what's the genesis of this? Does anybody have any input? Does anybody have any insight as to
From the zoning meeting, it was, they had to update the signage ordinance because they had several businesses and people wanting to update signs, put new signs up. They were having issues. That's why we got notified of the Save-A-Lot improvement to their sign. The ordinance that was in existence was telling Save-A-Lot that their sign was, they couldn't replace the same size sign on their building. They couldn't replace the same size sign on their pole that's been there for years.
Right.
So they were going to appeal that because they couldn't replace it with exactly the same size. Well, when they got digging into this and they'd had some complaints about some of the digital signs in Winchester and different areas, because some of them are in neighborhoods and they're really bright and they can be disturbing after dark. But so they looked into all of this, and part of that zoning meeting was they wanted the text to only change once every 4 hours, and they wanted to do away with digital signs altogether, and you know, it just spun sideways.
Question: Has
Yeah.
anybody from Randolph County Tourism had a conversation about this? Because I'm pretty sure they paid about $7,000 for a sign out there in Winchester.
No, to my knowledge, no. And the comment that came out of the zoning meeting, because I was sitting there, was that there's signs already in Randolph County, but all of them were non-permitted signs and should have never been installed because they violated the ordinance from the start.
I understand the residential argument big time. I get that. I mean, there should be, but in a commercial district, that's what I have a concern about. I mean, good grief.
Well, that gets to be some gray area because we're small communities and commercial and
True,
residential.
they
kinda
bleed
blend
into each other
together.
quickly.
Right.
But I think for example, I think it's like where the fire department sign is,
That's commercial.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I live on the edge of a commercial district,
Mhm.
and I can have some bleed over, but that goes way beyond signs when it comes to that. You know, the remember the old awnings on the Rite Aid building when it was Rite Aid that were blue and lit well.
Yeah.
My kitchen window.
Griswold Christmas.
You walk through the kitchen, and sometimes it was, you know, particularly at certain
More signs.
times it was pretty bright.
Right.
It wasn't offensive, annoying, or anything. It was in turn for us, but somebody else might find that to be a problem. It's different. You know, people have different opinions, but we can. And it was an adjustment when the K.I.S.S store went in, because now my backyard is lit up to a certain degree. Quite a shock when the whole pandemic thing came in, and then suddenly the 24-hour lighting back there went away. It got dark back there. I was like, wow. but it's just all those adjustments. So you're going to have some of that with residents, but I think that controlling it within the residential areas is reasonable.
Yeah, I would hope so. I
But,
guess.
but commercial,
What I was taking away from it was most of the signs that are up there are basically grandfathered. It's more or less kind of like new signs moving forward.
But what about the animation though? How would you grandfather old ones in for that and not give that flexibility to newer ones? That's what I would have concern about, because like, you know, like he referenced the Miami Theater, for example,
Right.
you know, we want that to pop, and there would be animation probably at times, we would want animation at times on that. It's hard to promote a cutting edge, next century style thinking facility that's encompassed by universities and
We've gotta put
community college, and we've got a stagnant sign.
letters
You
on-
think?
on-
Yeah. I have a hard time reconciling that.
Didn't you used to change a sign at Mark
Plastic.
Yeah.
with the
My-
12-foot long
My
pole?
brothers used to do that back in the late 70s, early 80s. I don't know. Do you guys, with your expertise in government, you know, over the years, do you have any thoughts on what a no from the council, if they, you know, obviously your decision, but if they ventured into issuing a no to this, what impact, if any, would it have on the county decision? Any thoughts?
It's gonna be your voice, but I think you have to go back and read the county zoning ordinance, but I thought that if a city votes it down, they do not have to abide by the one that's
Oh,
presented.
well, in that
I'm
case-
not sure that, it used to be that way,
In the
okay.
past, it was that way.
but I don't know if it still is.
One of Winchester.
Can I say something as a business owner?
Bob Gentry of,
Yeah, my wife and I
Division
own
Street?
2 businesses here, not up to much, but nevertheless, I'm pretty pro-business, I'll be the first to admit. This is like driving tax with a sledgehammer. I mean, they got some problems in neighborhoods, I understand that, and that makes sense. But to tell us that we can't have an animated sign, you're right, Chad. They want us to use 20th century signage
mhm.
on a building that's the 21st century and
Right.
moving forward. This is not making sense to me. I hope that you say no and let them work with it. But
And
I
just,
can tell you, as a business person, and I'm sure I can speak for Barb on this, we abide by the old sign ordinance, we didn't have any problem with that, but this is, they're taking a step too far as I'm concerned.
and just to be clear, I believe that after all this started, word spread pretty quickly. And the signs that are in places near neighborhoods, I believe they've voluntarily turned down the brightness of the signs after
I've heard
dark.
that also.
So I believe that the concerns basically remedied themselves just with simple conversation instead of going to the degree with this ordinance.
Would it, I almost wonder whether situations like that could be handled with a nuisance ordinance in terms of enforcement on that. That, I mean, and I don't even know, I'm not talking about writing a new ordinance, that you're gonna have, what could constitute a nuisance or
That's my
an
shine.
impediment to the public, and that at least could be used to negotiate, you know, doing exactly that, turning, if somebody weren't cooperative, but I think most people are gonna be cooperative. Businesses generally are, because they wanna appease people to, you know, you don't get more business by making people mad.
Yeah.
Doesn't work very well for me, I know that.
Right.
But
Well, what say you, council?
So if we don't take action, the amendment takes effect.
In 90 days.
Yes.
And then, yeah.
My proposal was table it till the county council makes their decision. If not, then we definitely vote no.
Well, on the other side of that, I mean, should we vote no now and give that signal to the county council?
Be the county commissioners, I believe.
Commissioners.
But
My understanding is the person that was supposed to present it just decided not to go, so I don't know if it's really a high priority on their list. If I'm incorrect there, please feel free to anybody correct me.
That's,
Well, your vote will go back to the ABC,
mhm.
because they're the ones that's putting it out, and they're the ones that sent it to you.
I would have to say I'm already disappointed with the APC because the last thing that was approved was on Oak Street in Union City. Sat on somebody's desk for 18 months and was never touched. So I don't know if they're really good at their job or if they just kind of occasionally do things. I'm up for what everybody else wants.
well.
I said we do it sooner rather than
I
later.
just rip the Band-Aid off and say, I make the motion, we reject Area Planning Commission Amendment 2022-1-A, an ordinance to amend the text of the Unified Zoning Ordinance of Randolph County by title.
We have a first, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Jan, if you would, roll call vote.
Brandon Elmore,
Yes.
Bob Leahy,
Yes.
Ethan Cochran,
Yep.
Tim Heiss.
Yes.
Now, the last, we
You
do
need
have
to
another.
state, we've spent way too much time in the last 2 years talking about signs when we're trying to be a community that wants to raise business, improve business, grow business. We're definitely not welcoming any.
No truer statement made.
Redevelopment Authority, that is the handout that you have, which would be ordinance number 2022-04 proposed. Is that 4 or 9? 4, right?
So 4.
Yeah. Yeah, basically what this entails, this is because of the bonding pursuit for the housing development on Plum Street. I'll go ahead and read it so everybody's aware. Basically, it's
I'm going to.
this form would authorize the Common Council of City Union City to create a redevelopment authority. Now, we have a redevelopment commission. This is unfortunately government for you. We already have a redevelopment commission, but this is a redevelopment authority controlled by a board of directors consisting of 3 members. And whereas in order to pursue the public purposes of the act, the Common Council now desires to establish this Union City Redevelopment Authority pursuant to IC 367-14.5-7, the City of Union City Redevelopment Authority, the redevelopment authority in quotes, is hereby created as a separate body, corporate and politic, and as an instrumentality of the City of Union City for the purposes and to exercise the powers set forth in the act or otherwise granted by law. The redevelopment authority shall be governed by a board of directors consisting of 3 members, each of whom shall be appointed by the mayor of the city. What all that says is this. This group is actually needed for the bond process for the development of the housing district on Plum Street. The bond process is actually they've got this here, it's a, holy smokes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 25-step process. So, which seems arduous, but I understand the point of it is to ensure that no governing entity just willy-nilly goes out and puts its civic entity into financial turmoil by taking out more money than they should be taking out and bonding more than they should be. Which through this process, that's not even possible. So, but step 1 was deliver a form of ordinance creating Union City Redevelopment Authority to Common Council for meeting on March 4th. That's the very first item on this list set forth by Baker Tilly. So that is simply step 1 of, again, 25. And this is all laid out through the next 2 months, basically the processes in which you guys will be intimately familiar with by the time we're done.
I move that we approve ordinance number 2022-04 by title only.
We have a first, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Jan, if you would, roll call vote.
Brandon Elmore,
Yes.
Nathan Conklin. Oops, sorry.
What about Bobby?
Leahy,
Yes.
Nathan Conklin.
Yes.
Tim
I almost
Heiss.
said
Yes.
Anyway, just out of
All right.
Do we need to suspend the
No.
rules?
Hey, I would entertain, can we suspend the rules with a member missing?
Oh, Lord.
I'm so sorry. I just realized we had unanimous, but I don't know if there's a stipulation.
There is commissioners, I don't know about the council.
There is a stipulation for commissioners, they all have to be
There's only
present.
3 commissioners though.
I
Right?
don't know.
Well, that's true, you, yeah,
We've got a
you
5-member
barely
body.
got quorum just by having, you only have quorum by having three.
Probably not for a council, but I don't know that.
I can try to Google it here.
Sorry,
I've got a-
Jan.
I've got a question while Jan Googles it. A member of the community has reached out and asked if AEP is in violation of the brightness that the signs would fall under.
We've
Is that your dad?
we have already had complaints over the brightness of the streetlights, so.
That's,
Did we do a lumen reading to make sure it was under the correct threshold?
I'm sorry, that's nothing short of brilliant, but. And in all fairness to, and I need to say this publicly, in all fairness to the area planning, at the end of the day, they are people trying to do jobs. They are people trying, you know, I know we all have our opinions certainly, but they're still human at the end of the day, just trying to do a job. Now, we may not necessarily agree in any way, shape, or form with some of the decisions that are rendered. But at the same time, there's certain things I'm sure that land within the space between their ears that at some point in time make sense. And when it gets to ours, it just doesn't, you know, because in all fairness, I've said some things I know that's not made sense to you guys, so, you know, it goes both ways. Jan, what we could do, I guess, if you're unable to find it, I guess since we did have a unanimous vote, we could vote to suspend the rules on the notion that we're doing so based on a unanimous acceptance.
I would just go ahead
And then if
and
we-
do it if we find out different.
Yeah, then we'll have to go back and just vote on it again.
Because, I mean, we have.
Because it would make it null, it would make the second vote null and void, so. So I would, since we did have a unanimous vote, I would hereby entertain a motion for suspension of the rules.
Apparently we're live. I'm getting blown up over here with messages from people in the community. Wow, this is good. Happy to see it's working.
Thanks, Bill. I'll move we suspend the rules.
We have a first, we have a second.
I'll second.
Brandon seconded. Would you take a roll call vote, please?
Brandon Elmore,
Yes.
Bob Leahy, Nathan Conklin.
Yes.
Tim Heiss.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended. I would hereby entertain a motion on second reading by title only.
I'll move we accept ordinance 2022-04, an ordinance of the Common Council of Union City establishing a City of Union City redevelopment authority by title only.
We have a first. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That was Bob. If you would, roll call vote one more time, please.
Brandon Elmore,
Yes.
Bob Leahy.
Yes.
Nathan Conklin.
Yes.
Tim Heiss.
Yes.
All right. Any visitors wishing to address council? You guys coordinate very well, by the way, sitting there.
I've already addressed my concern.
All right, well, our next meeting,
Brandon did bring up the point the last time I was here, I don't know if it was the last meeting, about Attorney Hall.
oh, yes, yes.
And he said that the county ought to get involved. We rent that facility to them for just shy of $800 a month, which includes all utilities and maintenance. So-
Very much involved.
So
Yeah, that's a pretty good sized structure.
that's in the thousands of dollars that we
Good.
put into that.
Awesome. Thank you for that, too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, if anybody's ever set foot in that facility over there and had the privilege of being there when it was a hospital way back in the day, it's amazing the transformation that facility took. So it's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Next council meeting will be Monday, March 28th, and that will be at 6 p.m. The Board of Works will be that same day. That will be at 1 p.m. I would hereby entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
We have first, we have a second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I'm huge in